Hi, class. Welcome back to week number 6. They will be talking about a little bit of chapter 5 and chapter 6. I'm also going to be focusing on chapter 6 because chapter 5 is it will be, preparation for chapter 6. So you need to review it and have an understanding of it. Overall, let's hope, well, thank you very much for the Padlet. You've done a very wonderful job so far. And this week we will be posting a Padlet and Flipgrid. I will also try to send you a link on a Flipgrid, how to use it, just in case if you don't know how to use it. We're also going to have short videos. You need to take a look at it to really answer your Padlet question. And you will have Flipgrid where you're going to read a question and answer it through the Flipgrid. Now, as we said, your result probably by end of this week, you will have it posted. Many of you have done well, and this is really nice. So without further ado, I will start the chapter probably soon now. And that would be most likely, okay. So we'll talk today about chapter 6. Basically, we will be talking about the political economy of international trade. Uh, in this chapter, we will be talking about the cross-border trade and investment. And so we explore the political and economic reason that governments have to intervene in the international trade, why they do intervene in the international trade. And as we discussed in previously in the chapter 5, you will find it also there. In a world without a trade barriers, trade patterns are determined by a relatively productive and different factor of production in the different countries. So we said that if there is two country produce, um, they will produce based on the efficiency level. So they will probably trade between what's make them say in they would be trading say between the woods and oil. If the production of oil in one country is better and more efficient, they will sell oil into this country, and this country gives trade awards or service for it. So it's according to the efficiencies and different factors like the environment and all these things. And also, we want to see, we saw that the countries will specialize in a product that they can make more efficiencies while importing products that they can produce less efficiencies. For example, Saudi Arabia, cost of producing a barrel is $10, which is considered to be the lowest in the world. And but to for example to produce a car, it will cost them so much, so they rather to um, export oil in return that they get their cars or food, or because it's a mostly desert, so it's so very difficult to produce food there, for example. So they export oil, which is cost very efficiently, very low, to say neighbor Egypt. And Egypt, because they have a good water and lots of production, they can export food to them. Now, with the free trade refers to the situation where government does not interfere at all. They have nothing to do with any trades happening, and is attempt to restrict what its citizen can buy from another country. So it does not really interfere with what the citizen buys from other countries or what they can sell to another countries. So that's what you call a free trade. They cannot interfere in what the person can buy from other country or what they can sell to other countries. Now, the case for the government intervention, when the government intervene, basically, when the government intervene, they often do so by, for example, restricting of import of good or service into their nation under different excuses while adopting policies that promote the export. So the GDP increase by minimizing import and maximizing export. So what they do, they try to stop importing and maximize the exporting. That's when the government intervene. There is a ways of doing it. Normally, their motives are to protect the domestic producers and jobs from foreign competition while increasing the foreign market for a product of domestic producers. So the farmers here, when they start producing, and for example, the wheat is cheaper, for example, in US, the Canadian have a tendency of buying American wheat, but if the government intervene uh, and make sure that they subsidize, or they will talk about it in after in the same chapter, then the cost of producing will go down, and when it goes down, then the cost of producing wheat it's low, so the price is lower, so they can export, and also Canadian locally will consume the local wheat. So, so as we said, normally their motives are to protect the domestic producers and jobs from the foreigner competition while increasing the foreign market for a product of domestic producers. Now, the instrument of a trade policies. When a government intervenes, they use what they call instrument of trade policies, which is include they put in tariffs, which is when you're importing something, you have to pay some money for the government, and the tariffs are two types: ad valorem tariffs and specific tariffs. There is other things which is called subsidies. That's one of the intervening. There is a import quota and voluntary export restraints. There is a local content in requirements. There is a administrative policies they can put on, and they can use the anti-dumping policies. So these are the ways the government usually intervene into the trade, and it's called instrument of a trade policies. Now, instrument of trade policies, as we said, first of all, is tariffs. And tariffs could be two types. That could be an ad valorem tariffs, which is a levied as a proportions of the value of import good. So the import good, and they put a proportion on it. And there is a specific tariff, which is also a levied as a fixed charge for each unit of a good imported. So example, $3 per barrel of oil. So on oil, $3 per barrel, they can put a tariff so they can be protecting the oil production within Canada, for example. Now, that's when things is coming from outside. Now, when the things wants to be exported or being consumed, pushing the local people to consume this product, then there is something called subsidies. And a government payment to a domestic producers, like what the US does for the wheat, they subsidize producers, or in Canada, they guarantee that they buy all subsidize the farmers. Now, can take many forms, as we said, including like they can give them a cash guarantees. So they give them money. They tell them grants their cash grants. They can lower the interest rate on loans, so they can take a loan. There is a less interest, so they can save. And it could be a tax break. and government equity participation, like they give them a free machineries or rent machineries at a very cheap rate. Everything that they lower their costs. Now, by lowering the production costs, subsidies help domestic producer into two ways, as we said. They help them to compete against the imports. So any product comes in because their local products is as cheaper because of the subsidies, they can compete, and they also help them to gain the export markets. Now, furthermore, there is what you call import quotas and voluntary export restraint. So there is an import quota, there is certain quota you can import from outside, like a direct restriction on the quantity of some good that may be imported into a country. And then there is a restriction is usually enforced by issuing import license to a group of individual or firms, like what they do in a state for cheese. They will give a few companies that they're allowed to import cheese, so they're not everybody is importing, and they can import a limited number. So, and this that trading. Now, there is also called a local content requirement. So, the demand that some specific fraction of a good be produced domestically. And this is what we see in local products in Canada, especially in the cars. We see there is the Honda, Toyota, and American cars like GM, Ford. They're all produced in Canada, and not 100%, but the Canadian government, they say, well, that you have to produce more than 45% of the product inside Canada to operate. Now, the requirement can be expressed either by physical terms, like 75% of the component part of this product must be produced locally, like Toyotas and Hondas, or in a value term, which is 75% of the value of this product must be produced locally. There is, especially in the field of high tech, usually 75% of, for example, percentage, which is a value term. There is an act in USA called Buy America Act, which is specified that government as agency must give the preference to American products when they're putting a contract for equipment. So the American company should buy Americans. Now, there is another one is what is called the instrument administrative policies, which is the bureaucratic rule designed to make it difficult for import to enter a countries. And many companies will be facing such thing if they don't want the other country don't want to really produce, let you import the product. For example, Federal Express had a problem in Japan because Japan had this rules against keeping the products has to be tested if there is for any unacceptable like a check for pornography and all these things. So the Federal Express couldn't compete well there. So it also gives the Japanese competitor to Federal Express an advantage. There is many of these you probably will run to it, and the funny thing, like one of the biggest trade that happens is when South American uh, telco company bought in Iran a third operator. Now, when they bought the third operator, they couldn't operate because the administrative policies, was difficult. Then we had what do you call Orange tried and also failed because of the administrative, and then I believe Orange had to pay so much money. So the Turkish had to walk out, and the Orange had to pay so much money because of the administrative. So the administrative rules was like this. They started saying For example, um, um, the first rule, they said, well, Orange, since the third operator, should put its own towers to for the telecommunication. They said fine, so they cannot share the towers, which is international business is allowing the sharing towers everywhere, but they came up with this rule. They said okay, so they had to go and build their towers. While they're building their towers and putting their towers, they asked them their tower should not be within 500 meters of other towers. That made it so much difficult for the Orange to work on it. And then Huawei walked in and they bought this and they start working on it. And uh, they had to spend tons of money in order to get these things up and running. So by this, they made a good support for the local telecommunication companies and also made the other companies uh, bring towers, employ local peoples, all these things. So that's cost also. It was a disaster for the operators. Now, there is another instrument of trade policy which is called anti-dumping, where dumping is selling goods in foreign market that below the cost of production or selling goods in a foreign market at their fair market value. So it is we've seen that there is some product you look at them and you wonder how come they are so cheap, and the reason they are so cheap because of the anti-dumping, because the government is subsidizing in other countries, so they are able to trade it and sell it very cheap here. And so the anti-dumping duties, which is often called the countervailing duties, if a domestic producer believes that a foreign firm is dumping production in the local market, it can file a petition saying foreigner are dumping the products at a low price, for example. In Canada, the company can complain to Canada Border Service Agencies, and service agency, which is CBSA, can do an investigation, and if they find it's appropriate, can put a tax on the foreigner goods. So when they walk in, they still have to, manage the prices at a fair price. Now, the case for the government intervene. Why a government wants to intervene? Sometimes that's their justification. There is a political argument for intervention. First, they're trying to protect jobs and in industries. Now, keep in mind, like there is so many clothing industries or shoes or simple manufacturing have moved to China from USA and from Canada, and the reason is because they are cheaper manpowers there. Now, the issues here is if Canada put a tax on or duties on these, so they can protect, for example, clothing industries. But that doesn't make a big difference because better that Canadian government focus on other industries where they're strong on. The second thing is the national security. The third thing is the retaliation. National securities, because they don't want to be dependent 100% to a foreign country where they, like right now, most of Europe dependent almost 100% on the Russian gas, and Russian have an upper hand in the political arena because of that. Now, this is what's happening these days in Syria, in Mediterranean Sea, in Baltic Sea, in the Black Sea, where they discover so much gas. So Europe trying to get out of the Russian domination, for example, and this is hurting their national security. Retaliation is just as example, if you see that, for example, if what's happened recently, NAFTA, before they signing the last NAFTA, um, um, uh, USA put some type of tariffs on steel Canada. Canada put some type of tariffs on the milk. So that's a kind of a retaliation from Canada. The other thing is a protection of protecting consumers. Could be the product from outside is not up to the standard or whatever. So they are coming with this argument that they're protecting consumers. Furthering foreigner policies objectives and protecting human rights. These are, or sometimes is the argument that they are used in to not import a product. Now, there is other things called the for intervention, which is the infant industry argument, which is industries who just initiated there and start growing, so they need to protect it so they can get stronger. And there is a strategic trade policies because of certain products strategically needed in this country. So, or they want to trade it there to take control over something. Now, between all these things, the trade international, there is what you call WTO or the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization act as an umbrella organization that encompass the following bodies. It looks after GATT, which is trade, World Trade General Agreement, trade and tariffs, and GATS, which is General Agreement on Trade and Services. And then there is a trade related aspect of intellectual property rights, which is TRIPS. WTO has taken the responsibility for arbitrating a trade. It's like a, like a court dispute. If there is any dispute or anything has to be monitored, it goes under the WTO, which is part of the United Nations and United Way. Now, simple basic of the WTO. When two countries, let's say, have a trade dispute, the WTO looks at the various trade agreements these countries have had over the years and the rules which is the best outcome of the current situation. Um, so as we said, it's an international court for the trades. So by this we are covering chapter 6. Now let me show you just very quickly what's in the chapter 5. And there is not much to do. You need to just go over it and you should be fine with it. And in chapter 5, basically, uh, it's just a cross-border trade and investment definition. So all you need to know is looking at their theories, what's been developed, NAFTA, what overview theories, Adam Smith theories, different things. This is all things that it's a background for the most important, which is chapter 6, which is the application of it. So go over it and see if you have any question, you can ask me. Otherwise, I think it's a very straightforward. Look at these numbers, how you make an argument of trade. I will post these for you. You will find them there. Now, so basically, by this we finish with the chapter uh, chapter 6, and you will have them posted. But I'm looking forward also to see your activities on Padlet and see your activities on on Flipgrid. Also, I hope by end of the week I should be able to send you these things. Your result, you will see it posted. If it's, I will notify you in the next class. Thank you very much, and bye bye.